We're on a mission from God.
Wendy?
So I got that going for me.
Darling?
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Light of my life.
We enjoy your films.
I am a human being.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in real time. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today marks the 40th anniversary of the release of Windows on February 18th, 1980. It was written by Barry Siegel, directed by Gordon Willis, and released by United Artists. This movie was protested upon its release for its portrayal of lesbians as insane people, which I think was a common theme for movies. It's a problem that affected cruising also later this year. Mm-hmm. And I remember distinctly that when Da Vinci's Code came out that there were protests because I hadn't realized it, but albino people were like always villains in movies.
Right.
And
what about Powder?
Powder was a rapist.
What? No.
The guy who directed the movie was, though.
Oh.
He was. He directed that movie.
Because of Powder.
No, I think he directed Powder afterwards. And then came out and directed Jeepers Creepers. That sounds right.
What a ride.
Quite a life that fella has led. This movie was nominated for 5 Razzies: Picture, Screenplay, Actress, Supporting Actress, and Director. Didn't win any. I don't think it deserved any of those Razzies.
That's a pretty impressive list of nominations, though.
Yeah, no, it's almost the big 5 if there was a dude in here.
The big 5 of Razzies.
Yeah. It almost One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nested the Razzies. Did that get the big 5?
I'm not sure if it got the big 5.
I know
because Louise Fletcher for sure.
Yeah, I think it did. It happened one night, that and Silence of the Lambs, maybe.
But it kind of says a lot about this movie that the male lead's performance did not warrant a Razzie, so he is literally the best part of the movie, I guess, according to the Razzies.
Mathematically.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder what the
that.
jury of the Razzies is made up of. My guess is a bunch of dudes. The soundtrack was provided by Ennio Morricone, but it doesn't save the film.
No, and I feel like this was his, like, let me see what I have in the desk drawer here.
I think he did that again for Hateful Eight.
Completely unmemorable for me because
Yeah.
I'm trying to think now of what the score was like. I forgot we saw his name come up at the beginning, and now I can't. I can't recall it at all.
Yeah, when I rewatched the movie, I was like, "Oh, that's right, I forgot. I'm going to pay closer attention." I totally missed the whole score the second time. I was like, "No, there's nothing here."
And I disagree with your Hateful Eight comment.
He didn't deserve the Oscar for it. It should have gone to Fury Road for sure.
I don't know if it deserved the Oscar, but I enjoyed the Hateful Eight and the score.
It's all right. We open in this cool, dark spiral with neon colors at a children's museum.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a famous children's museum in New York. I didn't know either until I was watching it the second time and paid closer attention.
I was like, where does she work? I thought it was an aquarium.
Her and her husband or ex-husband. The divorce isn't final, but
yeah. Although it seems like it is, and like as far as they're both concerned.
Well, she broke it off with him verbally in this first shot. They're standing in this tunnel, and she says,
"Stephen, we're getting a divorce."
And over the rest of the movie, she like calls him occasionally, but no one ever signs any paperwork that we see.
Right.
So, but yeah, so she says, "I want a divorce," and leaves.
So I feel like the husband here is do you think that he's sort of meant to be like a bit of a red herring, like for the film?
I didn't get that point. It's entirely possible. Neither. But it seems like every time she calls him, he's like busy, like with a team of people assembling some weird plexiglass jungle gym at the museum.
Yeah.
But I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm going over it in my mind and go, I wonder if that is what the intention was.
Well, I mean, it probably wasn't very well done if that was the intention, but I did keep thinking throughout the film that I'm like, oh, are they going to come back to him? Like, is he setting this whole thing up to get back at her because he seemed upset about this?
It seems like they also don't maintain the mystery for very long, though, because by the end of the first act, we already know who was behind what's going on. I guess it's possible he's like a co-conspirator or something.
Yeah.
But she immediately after asking for a divorce goes straight home and is attacked immediately upon entering her apartment by a man with a switchblade.
Brutally attacked.
Who doesn't turn lights on when they enter their home?
She just walks in.
Everyone in this entire movie, because this whole movie is super, super dark.
Yeah.
And when there is light, like it's very harsh shadows, like cast like, light just on half their faces so that they're, very much in shadow.
Yeah, trying to be very artistic here.
Well, this is directed by a cinematographer.
Right. This is his only direction.
Yeah, all of those things make sense.
It's actually not poorly shot, though. And there's a lot of really interesting shots, like when she's like leaning on the window of the new apartment.
Yeah.
And it's like backing away. I thought it was at least interestingly like composed, but
it may be a little overly dramatic in some of these shots.
So the guy that's attacking her in her apartment sets down a tape recorder and hits record and then puts a switchblade like up to her chin and is demanding that she make these weird like sexual noises and say yes.
Right.
All sorts of weird stuff.
And he has her like pull her shirt down or something like that. He cuts her bra straps, and then I wasn't clear if it went any further than that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either because the police aren't there until the following morning, but we cut from that to Emily's friend Andrea just running.
Right. I mean, it was pretty dramatic as it is. I'm not saying that it needed to be any more than that. I mean, he's literally shoving a knife down her throat.
But the extent of the assault isn't really made clear.
Yeah.
And we're on Andrea, the room next door neighbor, for so long that I was
thought it was her.
I mean, I was like, I'm confused. What's happening? Is this
I thought we were just cutting to her jogging the next day.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
Like, is this like because it's so long.
Yeah,
it's such a long.
It's her running across the bridge.
Right, and we haven't seen this other
character at all yet.
Long enough, at least not in any amount of daylight to really know what she looks like. So it is confusing when they cut to the first time we see. I keep gonna keep saying Andrea, but what do they call it? They pronounce
Andrea.
It Andrea. Yeah.
All the Andreas we know pronounce it Andrea. So I'm just going to keep saying Andrea. So, but yeah, she basically jogs up to the apartment right as the police are leaving, or some police are leaving, but there's still two in the apartment. There's Luffrono and a female police officer who isn't really participating in the questioning, and Emily seems unable to answer their questions.
We couldn't possibly give a female officer lines or anything like that.
We don't even ever see her leave the apartment.
That was a really awkward moment when after he leaves, like we never go back to the female officer, and we never see her leave, and it's just like, I mean, I guess kudos to them for having a female officer there. So I guess in 1980 they were still cognizant of the fact that it'd probably be a good idea to do that, but she was so forgotten in the scene that they don't even have her leave the apartment.
Well, and her lines of like, we understand how hard this can be. It's like,
yeah, and the male officer is not very kind with her when he's questioning her.
No, and his questions, like, he also makes some weird comments because up until now we haven't heard Emily do any stuttering. Doesn't mean she didn't have a stutter the whole time, but we haven't heard it, and it seems like in the wake of this assault, a stutter that she has been dealing with has come back. Well, she has all these books about learning to talk with a stutter.
Yeah, and I was unclear. So, like you said, they show the books with the stutter, about the stutter, and they hang on it for a while, so you can read each one.
Right.
Whenever she does stutter, it just sounds more like she's being awkward, because it's always just like a well. Maybe I'll do that later. Like it's never. Yeah.
I don't think that the actress really studied the unauthentic stutter. Yeah.
But I don't know if they were going for the sense that she is well versed in, and she's at a point with her stutter that she can control it mostly. And now it just kind of comes out, because I thought for sure there was going to be this great climactic moment where she's in danger and she's trying to get on the phone and she's too panicked to focus on her stutter that she can't get the information across, or that the stutter was going to come into play.
That would be really great. They should have put that in this movie.
Instead, they were just like, how come nobody stutters in movies? I'm going to make one of these people stutter. Let me throw a dart randomly at the script.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to be Michael Palin in A Fish Called Wanda.
That's the best movie stutter, though.
That's the best stutter ever. But it needed to be more than just, I think she's just an awkward, shy girl.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
But it almost sounds from the way the cop's talking to her like that he's blaming the stutter for her inability to tell them what happened. Like, I can't even tell if that's what he's implying, but he says like, oh, I know that you're impaired or something like that.
I know that you're at a disadvantage. And I realize it's not going to be easy for you to give us a description or to describe what he did.
You're making her nervous.
Like, he puts it in a weird way where it's like, are you talking about the assault? Or are you literally making fun of the way I talk and saying that I can't explain to you what happened?
Yeah, but his line of questioning was just all around pretty terrible. There was a lot of victim blaming stuff in not just this scene, but some of the other scenes where, you know, he makes her feel really awful. It's just like, well, you should be more careful, and you should, if you don't tell us anything, we're never going to catch the guy, and he's going to do it to other people or something like that. You're just like, oh, Jesus Christ, dude. Like, way to make her feel so horrible that she's not going to be traumatized and not going to be able to answer you.
I just don't want this to happen to anyone else.
But at the end of the scene, he leaves his card, and he leaves her in the apartment with Andrea. And then Andrea basically says like, oh, why don't I get you a cup of coffee? And she's like, would it be cool if you get out of my apartment? I just want to be in here by myself for the first time in 12 hours.
Well, and she also plants the seed of, you don't have to tell them anything because they'll never catch him anyway. Right. Like, she's trying to cover her own tracks. Which is just as
unhelpful as what the cop said.
I love his card, too, which is just a card that says where they are with it, like...
It's just the address of the precinct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His name's just typed on there. Like, this here, we
just throw it in a typewriter and type your name a few times if you need business cards. But yeah, so she, after Andrea leaves, she basically just packs up and moves to another apartment. It seems like she must have a lot of money. Like, her and her husband work at a children's museum, but she's able to maintain an apartment by herself. And then on top of that, she gets a second apartment.
And a better one.
Yeah. And it's much better, and it's the cat-free apartment. She just goes and signs up for another apartment, and the guy's like, remember, no pets. And she's like, oh, I guess I have to keep both apartments because my cat lives in the other one.
Oh, I didn't get that from that scene at all. I think she was just like, oh, okay. And she was going to continue moving and then sneak the cat in. And it meowed in the elevator, and, like, the lady was, like, staring at her like, you know, this is a... cat-free place. And then, she brought the cat to the other apartment.
That's true.
Which is what later she's, it disappears.
And
that's right.
The officer's there at her new apartment and says, sees her with the bag, so you can let the cat out of the bag now.
Oh, that terrible line.
Yeah.
But I also like how condescending it is. Like, it's like, well, this place will look really nice when you fix it up. And it's like, fix it up, it looks fine.
Yeah.
Like, what do
This is as clean as it's ever going to be. I have to put stuff in here now to live.
I have a cat.
But yeah, Emily meets her new neighbors because her phone's not set up yet. She asks if she can borrow their phone, and she tries to call Steven, but realizes as soon as she calls him that these two people are super rude and sitting there hanging on every word of the conversation.
Awkward conversation with your about to be ex-husband.
Yeah, right. But I think all she was calling to say was, I moved to a different apartment if you're trying to reach me.
Well, she wanted help moving. She wanted him to send people from the museum to help her move.
Yeah.
And
but he's like, we're too busy. I don't have time to do anything.
Yeah, and that seems like a pretty big ask.
But something else happened in the last 24 hours that she doesn't mention to him that might affect his answer to that question. But instead, he's just like, whatever. Just go live where you're going to live. And then she hangs up and she's like, thanks for letting me use your phone.
There's a payphone downstairs.
Yeah. And she's like, sorry, I didn't know. But I think that was just mostly to introduce these two neighbors at the same time as show like this uncomfortable situation she's been put in. Right after she leaves the apartment of her neighbors, we get this shot of Andrea sitting in a car listening to the tape that the attacker made. So from this point on, we know that she was involved, and right here was where immediately I was like, oh, so she paid that guy to do that because she's like obsessed with her.
Yeah.
And then you keep thinking, oh, it's going to get deeper than that though. There's going to be like other layers to this, and it's like no, that's the extent of the whole story.
That's the only layer.
So the last twist has happened already.
It's one of those onions that only has one layer.
I think they're called Funyuns. I guess they don't really have layers.
I don't know that the rapey movie is called Funyuns.
That was actually the original title. And then they were like, what the
They were
fuck?
sued.
By Lay's.
But it is called Windows for not very good reasons.
You want to know why it's called Windows?
Because sometimes the apartments have windows.
That's part of it. Also, the director was a fan of the title Windows, and they almost used it on the movie Interiors, which he was the cinematographer for Woody Allen's Interiors.
Oh.
And they threw out the title, and he's like, oh, I always liked that title. I'm going to make a movie and call it Windows. It's a good place to start.
Start with the title? That's only how Boulder Dash movies come to be.
Well, you know what they say. Windows are the eyes to your apartment. You have to flip it completely around.
I want that. I want a poster of this movie though now with that tagline.
Whatever their tagline was, it wasn't that good. So now Emily goes back to her house to get some stuff and to try and call Steve again in the privacy of an apartment. And Andrea shows up and she knocks on the door, and she lets her in. And they're talking for a minute, and then someone else knocks on the door, and she asked who it was the first time,
Right?
And waited for Andrea to answer, but this time she doesn't ask, or she asks but doesn't wait for any kind of a response.
Mm-hmm.
Undoes the latch.
Undoes the latch and opens the door, even though less than 24 hours ago she was attacked in this apartment.
Right.
And a hand comes through the opening and just tries to grab her. At which point it's like, okay, we already know that Andrea paid this person or is at least involved in this person's actions. What is the benefit of having this person come back?
Oh, well, so she could save her. She wanted her to trust her friend. So because Andrea
but it's
slammed.
just so dangerous to your plot to have the guy come back to the scene of the crime.
She wanted to be the hero, so she had him come back, and she,
smashed his hand up.
She smashed his hand in the door, enough to get him to go away. So she is able to demonstrate that she can protect Emily.
Yeah. Either way, it just seemed like a needless endangering of the whole plot to have the guy come back to the scene of the crime.
Yeah. See, I did not get that. It makes more sense, but I just thought that he was coming back to get her to be quiet, like that he was going to kill her.
Oh no! I think this was
to cover up what he did.
I mean, obviously we know that she's
paying him to do it.
Paying him and hired him, so she wanted to put on a show.
Yeah.
So she asked him strategically to come back when she was there.
Right.
That's like, because he's
and he comes in
injured.
like 2 minutes after her.
Yeah, but
I don't think she probably told him what she was going to do to him. But then he sticks it out. Like, he really still tries, even though she's hurting him. So it's impressive.
Well, maybe after the first time she slammed the door on his hand, he was legitimately that angry that he was like, all right, I'm going to get in there now. I'm going to kill both of them.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like the brightest bulb.
No.
Because he doesn't recognize her later.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like the person that you've met at least twice now.
So after this happens, they go to speak to the police. She speaks to them at their office and says, the guy came back, just sort of fills the cops in on the whole situation. He came back, but Andrea was there and stopped him, and I left the apartment. But she doesn't tell them where she's going to.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrea when the guy was attacking was trying to convince her, it's like, you have to come live with me now.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that was kind of her plan all along, was to like scare her out of this apartment, but like thinking
into
that
her own apartment.
I'm going to protect you, so come live with me.
Yeah. So she goes back to her apartment after she talks to the police, and the doorman tells her, oh, your friend brought all your stuff and she has your cat. Mm-hmm. So it's all up in your room. She made 2 trips and she brought everything from your house over here.
Right. Super creepy. Like, how, like, I know that
how
she
did you
said,
get the new address?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, she just vaguely said, oh, I moved across town, like it's on the other side of the bridge. Like, she didn't give her any specifics, so she figured that out somehow.
But so she's got all of her stuff except for her cat, so she decides she's going to go back to Andrea's place to get her cat. And Andrea's like wearing a bathrobe and drinking a big glass of wine and just trying to seduce her into staying in this much nicer house than even her like upgraded apartment.
Like, it's super fancy. Like, it's rich, high end.
Yeah.
But is it the same building? It's the apartment across the hall? It's like that much bigger?
It's the same building.
No.
Okay. She's
I don't
somewhere
think
else?
so. Yeah, because when she
obviously
calls
has
her
money.
later, she's like, you need to come down here. Like, you need to come all the way to my building. And she's like, oh, well, I'm not fully dressed. Like, I can't come to your apartment. And it's like, if it was across the hall, she would just be like, yeah, I'll be right there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the next morning, Emily is leaving her home again, and she sees Andrea and tells Andrea that she's not going to see this psychiatrist anymore that Andrea's seeing.
Dr. Marin.
Dr. Marin. Like, she's trying to get them to both go to the same psychiatrist or something.
Probably so that she can either get a hold of her file or try to squeeze Dr. Marin for information.
Sure, maybe that's what it was.
It's kind of an awkward meeting, though, because like it's clear that Emily wasn't expecting her, because she's just on her way out of the building, like running out to do something else. And
as Andrea's walking in.
As she's getting out of a cab.
Right, and then she flags that cab down.
And then Emily flags the same cab down that Andrea just got out of.
And then it seems like the connection is that Andrea uses this same cab driver all the time because...
Well, she was probably paying him off, or...
Well, yeah, she was. So when Emily gets in this vehicle, into the cab, she has kind of keeps trying to have a conversation with the cab driver, until she realizes that this is the man that assaulted me, and then. So I think that the implication would be that Andrea was meeting with him and for some reason in the cab and then got out.
But we're intercutting back and forth with Emily is in the cab with the man who attacked her driving it, and Andrea is being crazy in her psychologist's office.
Right.
And she's like, just sort of, we're getting little bits and pieces of her character motivation, but...
Yeah, so at this point, Emily realizes who the cab driver is. She can see the injured hand. She recognizes at least the voice or his face, and he says he recognizes her.
Yeah.
So she asks to make a phone call, and I thought for sure...
She would not get back in this cab.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing? You have all the information you need right now.
Well, she can't drop a pin. It's 1980, so she can't, be like, hey, I'm in a cab right now. Can you guys come get him? So she has to get out and call on a payphone.
But you don't know where the cab driver is going to take you at this point, because he has to be suspicious.
Well,
he must be suspicious.
He doesn't recognize her, then, if he doesn't completely recognize her, then he might just take her where she asked him to take her.
But she has the cab company, the cab number, the guy's name. She doesn't need to.
Yeah, this is more than enough information to be done.
But instead, she doesn't want to be awkward or make him suspicious, and so she gets back in with him and keeps going. Luckily, was she headed to the police station?
Well, she was
heading to her apartment,
and she just tells him to stop somewhere, and the police are there.
Yeah, because it gets to the point where he's 100% sure who she is, and so she tries to open the door, and he slows the car down because he doesn't want her to just fall out. For some reason, he should have just wanted her to fall out, or just stepped on the gas and been like, "No, you're not getting out of this car now. It's too late." But yeah, so the cops get the guy and they take him down to the station, and then we get this weird quick scene where he's like, "Oh, he says he was working with someone else, and he's not going to give up the name unless we drop all the charges." And it's like, well, no, just tell him no, because that's not how crime works. And you also, maybe for a lighter sentence, you can give up, the person that's in charge, but we're not going to drop all the charges get a second assailant. We already have the assailant.
Right, you're the one that committed the crime. Any of your conspirators, although guilty, didn't actually do it. They just paid you to do it.
They could get a lighter sentence if they gave you up, but not the other way around.
Right.
Luffrono, the cop, keeps making house calls to check on Emily and make sure she's okay, and he's managed to figure out her new address. He's getting really flirty with her, the cop is.
Yeah, because what's always really good is to take your assault victims out on a date.
That's the first thing they teach you in cop school is nothing gets a girl hotter than attempted rape. And so they're immediately having a romantic dinner together in her new apartment.
Right.
Yeah.
And under the watchful eye. And I love this trope of the ring to let you know that you're looking through a single ocular device. Like it's not binoculars because
it's not a Venn diagram of visibility. This is a circle, so I know it's a telescope.
One ring.
But we're like 2/3 of the way through this movie before we pull out the telescope, which would be the only indication as to why this movie is called Windows.
Yeah. But we are getting like these rear window style shots of the side of her building.
Well, she also grabs hold of the telescope as she's looking through it. It's like,
don't touch it.
You don't touch it once you got it locked in.
It's not going to stay pointed at the window.
It's going to wobble all around because later on we see how free flowing this telescope is. It's not very secure at all.
Yeah, you could just like grab it off of the stand and throw it around the room if you wanted to. But she sits there and watches them have dinner. And after they eat dinner, they watch a movie, now Voyager.
Which is great on like a 10-inch television.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what the line was, but at the end of the movie, like the characters have this really sad back and forth where one of them says like, "Oh, do you think you'll be happy here?" And she's like, "Oh, let's not trouble ourselves with whether or not I'll be happy."
And will you be happy, Charlotte?
Oh, Jerry, don't let's ask for the moon. We have the stars.
Yeah, it's just like, it doesn't matter if I'm happy. What matters is we're together. It's like, no, that's not what matters.
Betty Davis, no. But I love how she gets all, despite watching this on like 10 inches of screen,
sobbing.
She's like sobbing. It's like, how could you, it's also like 10 feet away from them.
Yeah.
The TV is like on the opposite side of the room. It's
Well,
like,
she has no furniture.
But it's like, how
just
can you
get
even
on your,
see it?
like, lay on your belly and go up to the TV with
It's
your
like,
eyes.
I have a laptop in my lap right now that's bigger than that television. I have to have it this close to see anything on it. And now they have this TV that's way far away.
Yeah. So on their next date, because they have multiple dates in this apartment, Emily pretends that she's out of coffee because she's trying to get the cop to leave because she wants to be alone for the night.
Just assaulted. Like the guy keeps like lingering. Like, all right, is this gonna go anywhere? It's like, dude, give the girl some space.
But I love the gesture she does to pretend she's out of coffee because she takes this big coffee can and she's like, "Oh, sorry, I'm out of coffee," and like shakes it upside down. Like, look, nothing fell out of it. It's like, why did you keep the can? Why are you doing this? And before he can leave, she gets a phone call from Andrea watching them, but she doesn't say anything until the phone is handed to the cop.
Right, Andrea doesn't say anything.
Right, Andrea doesn't say anything. And she's like, "Well, that's weird. There's nobody on the phone. Here, you talk to nobody." And gives the phone to the cop. And then the cop hears a woman's voice say, "You stay away from her.
Don't touch her."
Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, nobody," and then hangs it up.
But that's
which
interesting.
threw you off a lot.
It threw me off because when he's like, "Oh, nobody's there," maybe it was just his line read or something like that. I'm like, oh crap! Like he's in on this too. Is she like?
They're fighting over her.
And that's what I was thinking. Like he was like sent in to try to like, another ploy on Andrea's like, to like, make her rush back to her arms and like, but. That's not what's happening.
No.
That he
just didn't want to freak her out.
I kept looking for some deeper, like, plot here, and it really is.
Oh, here comes that twist we've been waiting for.
Oh, here's that interesting moment when it's just like she wants to drive you back to me and like get, no, none of that was happening.
None of it. So the next thing we see is her getting home to her apartment, and, she's in the apartment with Ida, her neighbor. And she calls the police and says, "Hey, so I'm here with Ida, one of my neighbors." And she says that they heard weird sounds coming from my apartment. And she sent her husband down to check on it. And he never came back. And that was like 2 hours ago. Mm-hmm. And while she's on the phone with the police, like Ida is kind of in denial a little bit. Just being like, "Oh, no, it's totally normal. It's nothing to worry about." And then she collapses and ends up hospitalized. But her husband is missing, and also the cat is missing. So maybe when he opened the door, the cat got out, and he's been chasing the cat all afternoon.
Right.
But yeah, so we don't know what happened here, but everybody's missing all of a sudden. Then all the police are swarming the building because they do find the husband's body in a refrigerator, like in the basement or parking below the
I don't think it
building.
was in a refrigerator.
It was a refrigerator in the
was?
basement. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kids were not paying attention to that PSA and playing inside the refrigerators.
Well, that Punky Brewster episode had not come out yet.
You're fine. Remember, you were playing hide and seek, and you got locked in the refrigerator.
There was a G.I. Joe episode also that had also not aired.
You're the ringleader.
Oh.
G.I. Joe!
But yeah, so they had a bunch of like there was more than one refrigerator in this parking garage. But
he was in the one covered in blood.
Yeah. So they
Why didn't I check there first?
And then he says, you need to check all of the refrigerators in the whole building. And he's like, why, you're expecting more bodies? And he's like, no, a cat. And then he leaves.
Did he really say that?
He did.
Yeah.
I totally missed that line.
And again, like Pat said, like this. Apparently, there's a lot of refrigerators in this basement.
Well, that I feel like that line would have ruined it for me because I was not expecting
what happens next.
What happens next?
Yeah. For some reason, the psychiatrist that she's been seeing is visiting Andrea at her very fancy apartment, and she pulls out a very cool-looking knife.
Yeah.
That you said was over-sharpened.
Oh, well, it looks like a knife that had used to be much bigger and got sharpened down to a very
this
interesting
cool, like,
shape.
scimitar.
Yeah.
And she kills him.
And leaves a perfect bloody handprint impression on the glass.
Right. At this point, it seems like she's at the final stage of like a serial killer's momentum where you just lose it and you stop caring about the evidence that you're leaving behind.
Because he was literally trying to get her to go to an institution that night. Like, that's why he was there. He was there to pick her up so that they could go. And he's like, oh, I'm so glad you've made this decision to go get help. And
I'm glad you're going to go willingly.
Yeah.
But at this point, the time between when she kills Dr. Marin and the climax of this movie, which is coming up fast, someone in that building had to have noticed the big bloody handprint on the front door, and then started making inquiries through the building, found the doctor's body in Andrea's apartment.
Right. At this point, it's irrelevant.
Be a warrant or a person of interest. Andrea must be a person of interest at this point.
Right. But this is like the last scene in American Psycho where he's just killing people all over the place. It's like, it doesn't matter. This is the end game of my serial killerness.
But there's 24 hours elapsed, and there's not.
But she goes to an apartment that no one knows she has.
Yeah, she got a different apartment.
But no one's even considering her as a suspect for anything.
That's true. The cops don't figure anything out until the next day.
Because even that, he's trying to figure out who this person could be or who she could be with.
And that's of course, Scooby-Doo style, the only other person that we've seen in the whole movie. But yeah, so she kills her psychiatrist, and we cut back to Emily in her apartment getting ready to cook something.
Yeah.
And she goes to open the freezer, and we see what I'm pretty sure is a 100% authentic dead cat.
Yeah, that was a pretty authentic looking cat.
If it's not a real cat, it's the most convincing prop I've ever seen.
But I love the sound it makes when it hits the ground.
Yeah.
Because it's covered in fur. The fur wouldn't freeze like solid, so it would have a muffled sound. It sounds literally like a dinner plate hitting the floor.
Yeah. It sounds like you dropped a jade cat on the floor.
Yeah, I was half expecting it to make that sound like a.
That would be so great.
But so she's so traumatized by this that does she call Andrea, or does Andrea call her?
She does. She calls. Yeah. Well, she tries to call the cop, and then the dispatch tells her he's not here.
Yeah, but then she says, "Have him call me," and then she hangs up. It's like,
oh yeah, who is this?
What is this?
And it's like, obviously, if he said, "Oh, a distressed woman called here and said to call her back," he's gonna know who it is. But for that guy, he would have just been like, I don't understand.
Someone called for you.
But so then Andrea calls her because she's...
No, she calls Andrea.
She calls Andrea?
Yeah. And says... I think she calls Andrea.
No, Andrea calls her
because she's watching through the telescope.
Because she's watching through the telescope and she knows what just happened. And that because she's not at her house. She's at this other apartment that she got that overlooks Emily's new apartment.
Right. And she says, hey...
Oh,
Can you come here and help me? And she says, oh, I'm not at home. I'm uptown.
Right. I got this new apartment. I'm not dressed. You should come over here. It'll be faster. And then what really bothers me is she just picks up and goes. I'm like, you just left that cat defrosting on your floor. Put it back in the freezer, lady.
Yeah. It's going to be totally worthless tomorrow.
And I love
you
that.
You got to cook the cat right away, or otherwise it's so good. You can't refreeze the cat after you thawed it.
Yeah. Hopefully that was just one of its lives. She writes down the new address, but apparently can't remember it because then she just rips the whole page out of her little Rolodex.
Yeah. It's a Rolodex. You wouldn't rip a page out of a Rolodex.
Well, yeah, and you can't remember a street name and a number because that's really all you would need. Yeah. And she rips it out.
It's not like this is Los Angeles where all the streets like intersect each other at 12-degree angles. Like this is New York. It's just a big piece of graph paper.
Yeah. I thought this was going to be a really great Big Lebowski kind of reveal moment when he figures out the page is missing, but we'll get to that in a second. Because there's a lot that happens in between.
Yeah, I know what you mean by Big Lebowski moment. I just figured that out.
Because he comes back to the apartment, finds the cat, and just starts making like inquiries. Find out all the cabs who made pickups. I want a list of everyone who's bought a telescope.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, it's the middle of the night. How is somebody going to find a list of... It's 1980. How do you find a list of everyone that's bought a giant telescope in the last
usually
few
they
days?
didn't publish the weekly telescope purchases until 6 a.m., so...
I'm just saying.
He must have got an advance copy.
I don't know who keeps track of that stuff, first of all, because, it's 1980. People are buying things in cash. There's no records of these transactions.
Yeah.
Even if you were to get a hold of a store owner, who the hell has that?
Yeah.
It's like, describe everyone who's bought a telescope.
Yeah, or it's like you go to buy a telescope and say, oh, I'm sorry, this is a controlled substance. You're going to have to give me your name and your driver's license. No, it's a telescope. You walk in, you pay $900, and they go,
money.
Here's your telescope.
Or at the last second, you change your mind and spend all that money getting Patrick Dempsey to date you for a week or whatever. What's that movie, Can't Buy Me Love? Where Patrick Dempsey buys a girlfriend.
What does that have to do with a telescope?
He was going to get a telescope. He was
it?
saving up for a telescope, and then he spent all the money paying a girl to pretend to be his girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
It made sense, guys. I just screwed it up.
That was either a really expensive telescope or a really cheap girlfriend.
I think it was like Christy Swanson or something, so must have been a really expensive telescope.
Because, I have a really decent telescope, but it's only like $250.
Well, you could pay someone to be your girlfriend for a week for $250.
Where were we?
Well, he's making inquiries, and we're playing the waiting game as far as the police action is concerned. Meanwhile,
but Emily's story is unfurling a mile a minute. She gets to the apartment, the new apartment, which looks like a weird, it was an apartment from one angle, but then when she walks in, it's all like wood panel.
It's like a spa.
It looks like a log cabin.
Place. Yeah, log cabin.
There's a lot of exposed brick. Millennials will be crazy about this now.
I liked it. I'm a millennial.
It feels like a very warehouse loft kind of apartment.
Yeah. And so Emily walks in, and there's basically a door open to a bathroom, and the implication is that she's literally mid-shower when Emily walks in. There's just steam pouring out of an open bathroom door while she takes a shower. And Emily walks over to the telescope in the corner of the room, which, when she looks through it, sees that it's pointed directly at her apartment window. But
I can see my house from here.
It's like, oh my gosh, Andrea. But at the last second, switcheroo, she's not in the shower. She just turned it on for no reason, to trick you, for no tactical advantage.
Because she's not wet at all.
Yeah, she's just standing in the bathroom. Not visibly.
That's where the steam was coming from.
Oh my god. The shower's not even on in there. But when she looks through the telescope, she sees that the cop is in her apartment, trying to look around, and she sees him slip on the cat. No, that doesn't happen. That'd be good though. Whoop. But yeah, so Andrea's basically, the jig is up. She's just full on crazy mode, explaining all of her feelings, and does she even admit to having paid the guy to attack her and everything?
I don't know if she I don't think she admits it, but she says all the same things that he does.
Right.
Yeah.
She repeats all the lines that he does, which I feel
it's enough
like
to confess
implies
it.
that she really distinctly told him exactly what he wanted
she gave him
to
a script
say.
for sure.
Yeah. But oh my gosh, though that moment when she's like saying those lines and that shot went on forever.
Yeah, there's like a 2-minute shot of her just screaming for her to do what she's saying, and she basically gets to a point where she says like, "Oh, so you paid that guy to attack me?" And she's like, "He didn't attack you. I told him not to hurt you. He couldn't hurt you. I could never hurt you." And then like it basically comes out that she couldn't ever hurt her.
Yeah.
And so she's just like, "Oh, so you're threatening me for no reason because you could never hurt me."
Meanwhile, this goes on the entire night.
Yes.
Until the next morning.
And there's no like cops busting in moment.
No, it's the police. He still hasn't figured it out. The cops still hasn't figured it out by the next morning.
Because he wanted a list of people who bought telescopes. Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And now Talia Shire is awake in the morning. They're awake together, and she says, Andrea says something along the lines of, "We just spent the night together."
Yeah.
I was like, wait,
you guys have just been standing there all night?
But I thought the implication was that did they have sex?
No. I think she was just being coy, like, with that line.
Okay.
Just being
like, I finally got you to stay the night.
We finally spent the night together, but literally they just were in the same room all night.
Just shouting at each other.
Yeah. And at this point, this is when the police officer starts to reveal the Rolodex.
Right, where you push the letter and it pops open to the page.
Right, you slide the little pointer to the correct letter of the alphabet, and you hit a button, and it pops open, holding that page to that letter open.
And when he tries to go to G, it keeps going past G to H because the G pages are torn out.
But
he discovered a missing
but
page.
It was already on G, and he notices it. So I only needed it in one instance, that it's on H, he closes it, and it's on G. I would immediately go, "That's strange. G is missing." I wouldn't put it to H, open it, close it again, then put it to G, open it, and close it again. Yeah. I was like, no, I already got it. You should already have it too.
No, it's like,
you're smarter
this is
than
the
this
80s.
cop.
You needed to spell it out for people, literally. But he doesn't do what you were expecting, and kind of what I was expecting too.
What I was expecting too, yeah. I was waiting for him to do a pencil rubbing on the page to find the address.
Because he knows that she wrote something on G and tore it out. Mm-hmm. So you would do a rubbing on the H page, and you would get a picture of just a dude jacking off.
But she could have written it down on any letter. Like, it just happened.
If it was literally just an address, like, it didn't have to be on that.
Yeah, it didn't have to be, "Oh, hold on, I have to make sure I put this under your name put your new address under your name, even though I'm going to tear this page out anyway." Yeah. It made no sense for it to be on G.
Right. But even that information is useless to them because meanwhile, across the alley, like they eventually figure out, "Oh, it's G. Who's a G? Who's a G? Mm-hmm. Oh, that Andrea girl. Oh, where does she live? Oh, she has an apartment here, and there, right there outside the window." Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, well, the person who called me that one time must have been able to see, so that's probably her place. Let's go over there." But it's irrelevant when they show up because nothing was about to happen. They literally fade from the two girls facing off in the apartment to her just walking with the cop outside the building.
Right.
But he actually gets the list of cab drop-offs, though. And this is the part that I'm like, why do we even have this scene? Because he gets the addresses of all the pickups that happened at that time and place.
Right.
General time and place, and all the places they were dropped off. And one of them is Andrea's address. But he's like literally looking at a map, comparing these addresses, like, yeah, none of these would have a view of her apartment. But one of them clearly does. And then he figures out later that is the address. It's like, oh, wait, that one sounds familiar. Oh, yeah, that was one of the cab drop-offs.
Yeah. And that's basically the end of the film, is them walking away from the building like, well, I'm glad we got that settled. Yeah, and then they walk across the bridge.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Bridge is just everywhere in this movie. That's the real villain of this movie.
Yes.
This is looming over.
Should have been called Bridges.
Really? I agree. Because it's that bridge is the distance, the span that they had to cross.
The windows are what separate us. The bridges bring us together.
That's right. This is one of those times where a movie where they completely roll the credits over action of just something happening.
Yeah.
Which to me is just like an incredible waste of film.
You always hope that it's the last shot, like the martini shot of the whole movie, so at least the actors can be walking like, okay, as soon as we're done getting the shot, like, we can all go back to our lives. Like,
this is the last thing of the movie.
I would save that for the end of the shoot if I was the production manager.
How long are the credits going to be? We don't know. Just keep walking.
You never know when more people are going to show up and work on set.
I want somebody to do that now. Like, bring that style back. Like, I want a Christopher Nolan movie to end with somebody walking away for 15 minutes as all the credits to his movie roll.
No, his movies end with ambiguous hard cuts. That's the rule for him.
I can't remember how long Michael Clayton's goes on for. Michael Clayton goes on for a while.
Yeah.
Where it's just on George Clooney's face the whole time while the credits are rolling.
Yeah.
Great film, Michael Clayton, if you haven't seen it.
I don't think I have, actually. He directed that, right?
I don't recall, actually. No, Tony Gilroy.
Oh, okay.
I think he directed that one with it's like a
The Monuments Man?
No, it's the one. It's his face on the Time magazine, like with
Ides of March.
Ides of March. I think Clooney directed that one.
I don't think he did.
No. Okay, we're just gonna keep listing movies.
He directed Leatherheads, I think.
Oh, he did direct Ides.
Ha! I win.
Fine. We're cutting that part. I could never win. Like we said before, the director of this film, Gordon Willis, didn't direct anything else.
What you talking about, Willis?
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew I was gonna work it in.
It's funny because the director, I don't know if you heard, the director's name was Willis too.
I was just gonna say it.
You were just gonna say it.
Willis. Just say it.
Yeah, but so he obviously, we said before, he was a cinematographer on a bunch of Woody Allen movies actually. But he worked on Interiors, which was originally called Windows, and now this movie is. He also worked on Manhattan.
And The Money Pit.
The Money Pit? Did he do The Money Pit?
Oh, really?
He also did the whole Godfather trilogy and All the President's Men. So a lot of credits. But I feel like after this movie, he immediately was like, oh, not a director. I'm going to go back to being acclaimed. The writer, Barry Siegel, also no other writing credits. Talia Shire as Emily Hollander, obviously lots of stuff. She was the daughter of the Godfather getting married at the beginning of the first film. She is Francis Ford Coppola's sister. She was Adrian on the Rocky films, and she is the mother of Jason Schwartzman in real life and in the movie I Heart Huckabees.
Oh, really?
She's so great in I Heart Huckabees.
That's amazing. I think she's adorable in this movie.
She is. She's very what's her name from The Shining?
Shelley Duvall.
Shelley Duvall.
Yeah. Scatman Crothers.
That's her name. I always forget her name. Scatman Crothers. Joe Cortese as Bob Luffrono. He was Rasmussen in American History X, and he plays a recurring character named Sal on Always Sunny. But other than that, not a lot of huge roles. Elizabeth Ashley was Andrea Glassen, who she was on a lot of soap operas, but most recently, the thing that I really liked her in was Ruth on Russian Doll.
Huh. Ruth on Russian Doll.
That's the friend of the family psychiatrist woman who she's always checking in with.
Yeah,
that's her.
She was great.
That's the.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't recognize her.
And seeing her young makes her a perfect choice for, like, she could very easily have been Natasha Lyonne's mother on that show, but she's not the mother. But they look very similar.
Right, she's supposed to be her aunt.
Yeah. Well, the Wikipedia page says close friend of the family.
Oh.
So
I thought she
refers to her as her aunt, or she might have been like how Richard is
Uncle
Richard. But okay, so Kay Medford, the neighbor, was Ida Marx. This was her last film. She was nominated for a supporting actress Oscar for her role in this film. No, I'm just kidding. As Rose Bryce in Funny Girl. She was also Happy in Butterfield 8. And she plays Rhodes' first wife in Face in the Crowd. That's that movie that I just watched pretty recently with, like, Andy Griffith going crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Gorrin plays Sam Marks, the husband who went missing. He will have 2 more movies in his career. Hero at Large, which we will cover later this year, and Stardust Memories, which is also this year. So his last 3 movies were all from 1980. Russell Horton played the ex-husband or soon-to-be ex-husband Steve Hollander. He's in Annie Hall. He's the guy in line who doesn't know anything about Marshall McLuhan.
Oh, yeah.
Who gets in an argument with Woody Allen. He also played Mr. Milquetoast in Cat's Eye. I don't know what character that is because I'm not familiar with that movie.
I am hyper familiar, but I don't remember a character named Mr. Milquetoast.
Yeah, I don't remember that character either.
And Rick Petrocelli, who plays O'Beckney, the attacker, he doesn't have a lot of credits, but weirdly also in that line in the movie scene in Annie Hall.
Oh, okay.
He's
really?
just like, I looked at a picture of it, and he's just standing like 4 people in front of Woody Allen in the movie line.
Funny.
So Gordon Willis knew this guy somehow.
Yeah.
Like probably saw him on the set. He had a lot of laughs.
Yeah, he did a bunch of
How
connections.
would you like to play a rapist?
It might have just been like, hey, Woody needs extra people for the line, and he just called his like 3 best friends in town and was like, come on down here, you can be a Woody Allen movie. And then he used them for his own movie because that's what a friend would do, right? But yeah, I think that's everything I have for this one. Jess.
Yeah.
Up or down?
Like, do I recommend watching it?
Yeah.
I don't think you need to.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a pass.
Skipperino. that's 3 no's. Letterboxd, is this better or worse than Just Tell Me What You Want?
Well, for me, it's better because I just really don't like Just Tell Me What You Want.
All right.
Yeah, I agree. Better than Just Tell Me What You Want, for sure. Please don't tell me you're thinking about it.
I'm going to consider this. Where did I put it? Yeah, this is above. Just tell me. I think that's everything for this one. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, we are Vintage Video Pod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Or as I said before, you can find each of our full movie rankings for the year. You can also find us at vintagevideopodcast.com. Please consider rating us on iTunes to help people find the show. And if you take the time to leave us a review, we will thank you personally in an upcoming episode. If you're feeling especially generous, you can also support the show at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing To All a Good Night, the first of the Killer Santa movies.
There's more than one?
Is this really the first?
I think it's at least very early in the genre. It's pre-Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Oh, man.
But, yeah, so stay tuned for that, and thank you so much for listening.
It was the start of Christmas vacation. A few were staying, and they planned to have one hell of a good time.
I would sincerely like to wish all those students leaving for Christmas vacation a pleasant journey and the happiest of holidays.
TJ is coming up with a few of his friends tonight.
The dean of the school was away, so the girls decided to invite their boyfriends. It was against school regulations, but they were always very good at breaking the rules. This time, they'll wish they hadn't.
You must pray. Pray so the devil won't claim you for one of his own.
Santa came to kill.
What the hell are you doing up here in that dumb outfit?
Even the police didn't suspect Santa Claus.
Oh, Tom, take that bloody mask off. Take me to bed.
No one suspected Santa Claus. He was hunting for blood. He was everywhere. What kind of a crazed mind was killing and mutilating his victims? There was no one to help. No one at all. They ran, they cried, they died. Merry Christmas to all. And to all, a good night.